Lou, welcome to the Tech Recruitment Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here because you have a lot of experience in this industry. And when I say a lot, I mean like a lot, a lot. You just said before we kicked off that you have been working in this industry for 44 years. And that's just unbelievable, right? You wrote several books. You are actively contributing with the community. What I would be kind of interested in to learning more about is what are some universal rules or some kind of takeaways that you carry with you over the years?
Well, it's interesting because I just talked with the vice president yesterday of a major corporation. He was out looking for a job, and he found another job about 4 years ago. And he said 4 years ago was easy. I got calls, half a dozen calls a week. Now I'm getting no calls. And I said this to him. I said, your resume is not a great document for describing who you are as a person. A job posting is not a great document to describe what the real work is. So mixing and matching resumes to job descriptions is a lucky guess. And you can put a lot of artificial intelligence on that, and it still isn't perfect. So the rules I have, if you really want to get a great job, it's probably going to be through a referral or a referral of someone whom you know. And in chatting with this fellow yesterday, who I didn't even realize I knew somebody who might want to hire him. It was an old client from 20 years ago. So last night, I sent an email to that client and said, you might want to meet this guy. 40 minutes later, he said, we absolutely want to meet him. They're talking this afternoon. Now, this was pure random luck, but the idea is when you talk to people, get on the phone. I knew this candidate. His resume was fine, but it didn't say how good he was. And he's looking for a job, and they don't really define the job. So in some way, all of this posting and resumes and all this stuff is an utter failure. And you have to kind of go behind the doors to figure out, hey, how do you put good people together with good jobs? Is this person going to get a job for that? I don't have any clue. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't talk to him on the phone and have that conversation. So I don't know if that's the universal rule is, but that is the world that we live in. And if you want to be a good recruiter, you have to figure out how to play in that world. And it's always a different game.
So the human touch, if we could label it somehow.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And it's very interesting that you say this because I've seen recruiters within our community who are kind of jumping from one role to another, from one client to another, from one job rec to another, and they often cannot build the meaningful relationships with neither clients nor candidates. And probably this is going to be even worse now with all the AI messaging, automated messages on, all these different platforms. So where do you see the industry heading with regards to the AI and automated messaging and everything that's going on?
Okay, so let me take it at a little different picture. Because I've been around so long, I believe that changing jobs is an important decision for the candidate. In fact, more important for the candidate than the company. It's not unimportant for the company, but the company hires lots of people. So they make one or two mistakes is not going to hurt the company. But a candidate that makes one or two mistakes is going to hurt their career. So if you make this, and I think recruiters can be very successful in an impersonal world, using the latest technology, being faster, but that's one part of the talent market. Let's assume that there's two big parts of the talent market. One part is active candidates who are willing to change jobs for more money or short-term reasons. And maybe that's 20 to 30% of all the people in a function. But the 60 to 70% or 70 to 80% who are not willing to do that. They tend to stay longer, 3 to 4 years with a company, aren't willing to leave, aren't going to jump on postings. And reaching that market is a more personal approach than the high volume impersonal approach. My experience has been largely with the personal market, and I have familiarity with how do you optimize the impersonal market. So let me kind of make that general statement. The first thing, the reason I was a good recruiter Now, maybe it was timing, 1978 when I became a recruiter, because my background is manufacturing, engineering, finance, accounting, business process, IT. I had a lot of experience, a lot of functions. So when I talked to a hiring manager, they knew that I knew what I was talking about. They knew that I understood business. They understood that I knew the engineering. They understood that I understood the finance. So I had a lot of credibility as a recruiter because I had some knowledge about business and the jobs. I think when I talk to hiring managers today, the concern they have is these recruiters don't know anything. They're just using a resume. They're just making it's a volume deal. So I think, so if I was going to give strategy to a new recruiter is know the job, know the company, know the industry, be a specialist. So if you're a specialist, you can know the work, you can develop a network, you can go combination of personal and impersonal together. But if you're handling a dozen different kind of jobs, you're not going to get there. But if you're handling a few and you're an expert in a certain field, I think you have credibility. Now, the field that you should be in is one in high demand. You know, obviously, if I was going to be a recruiter today, it would be using artificial intelligence and really, I mean, so much money is being spent there, whether it's the chip design or the software related to it, irrespective of that. To me, that's the field that I would choose if I was going to start over again. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question because I can't remember it anymore, but it seems to be an important topic regardless.
Exactly. I mean, it was well in line with where I was heading with also the next question, which is about choosing the niche. So you mentioned how important it is to choose some specialty and become really an expert in that. So one concern that also our members of the Tech Recruitment Academy have is how to choose the niche. So obviously the demand is one aspect. You can say that, for example, there is demand for AI specialists, but also probably there are not that many open roles for AI specialists out there compared to some other jobs. You know, so there may be lots of other jobs on open, but the rates are lower. So how can someone who is just transitioning to the industry, becoming a tech recruiter, how can they decide what to focus on?
Well, let's take a look at it. So let me give a couple of examples. I would take your concept of supply demand analysis and say, okay, I'm going to go where the demand for these jobs is the highest, but the supply is the lowest. So let's look at sales executives, account executives. So I'm going to go in, okay, in the United Kingdom, there are 700, let's just say this, there's 273 open jobs for account executives selling B2B SaaS software. Just I made that up, of course.
Yep.
And then I look at on LinkedIn Recruiter, I said, oh, it looks like there's only 73 candidates who are active for that job. So the demand is 4 times greater than the supply. So now I can call the hiring manager up somehow and say, hey, I can help you find these people. Now all of a sudden you got to find the people, but to me, that's how I would start. So now you go into data analytics. How many data analytics job openings are companies looking for now, which is a high field, and how many candidates are actively looking? Now, obviously there aren't going to be a lot of candidates, but that's an opportunity to you to find candidates and using a personal process. If you want to go impersonal, so let's think if you want to be just pure tech, you'd probably reverse that, or maybe you'd find a balance. And then the goal is, I got to get these candidates in faster. That becomes a different business challenge. If you're impersonal, you better be fast and good. If you're personal, you can be slower, but you got to be great. And you really have to understand the job, the career opportunities, a host of other things. From a personal satisfying standpoint, you, the recruiter, have to make that call. What makes most sense for you? But if what I just described as supply demand analysis doesn't make sense or you don't understand it, I'd be concerned if you should be a recruiter. I'm being real frank here. That's some basic kinds of stuff you have to know. Okay, I'm going to go into I'm creating a business for myself. I want to be in a business that I can see being in it 3 to 5 years. So those kind of business decisions you have to make. How we then take a search assignment we can get into, but that at the high level of, hey, where would I choose to go? That's how I would make the choices on some kind of supply demand analysis.
And it's great that you mentioned it this way, because I've been interacting with recruiters in the past who, for example, looked at DevOps and cloud engineering, and they were kind of emotionally attracted to this because it feels cool, DevOps in the IT world. But also there were not that many companies looking for DevOps engineers, yet they were kind of drawn to this. So it's interesting how you are looking at this decision from the economical or business perspective.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, now let's say this: if you have a DevOps background and you think it's cool, that shouldn't be the reason. It's because when you're talking to the manager of that group, you have some credibility. And that was part of the credibility that I had when I started as a recruiter. Is I really was an engineer. I have an engineering degree. I really have a master's in finance. I really do. I planned budgets for large corporations. I designed complicated business systems, were involved in that. So that credibility of subject matter expertise is critical. My partner, when I started as a recruiter, was a CPA. He wasn't a very good CPA, but he was a good recruiter. So he started placing lots of accountants. There's a credibility with the financial people and a credibility with the candidate when you know the job at some level of technical competence. So I think that's an important component as well. Now, AI can help do that. And I'll give a story at some point in time in our talk here today of how I convinced the number 2 engineer at one of the largest shopping networks to hire me to handle 40 software development jobs. I didn't want to do it, but I'll give the example, and then we can kind of talk about how that's an important way to get business.
Oh, well, please go ahead. It's very interesting.
Okay, so I have already set you up for that one, right? Now you're interested. No, I'm not going to tell you. No, I will.
Good teaser.
So there was a client that I had in the UK, and the president had been using my methodology, which is called performance-based hiring. Performance-based hiring is the idea that we define work as a series of performance objectives. Ever take an assignment, even my first assignment back in 1978 was for a plant manager in the automotive industry. So I'll give this story, then I'll come fast forward. In my first search assignment, but remember I had been in industry for 10 years, so I wasn't newbie. The president of the company said, I'm looking for a plant manager, had to have 10 years of this, an engineering degree, this kind of manufacturing, results-oriented, good communication skills, all the kind of standard stuff. And I looked him in the eye and I said, this is not a job description. This is a person description. Let's put the person description in the parking lot. What does this person need to do to be successful? We walked around the plant and found 7 or 8 things that this person needs to accomplish over the course of a year that would turn the plant around and make it profitable. Don't need to get into the details. But over the years and doing maybe 1,000 to 2,000 different jobs descriptions, I have never used skills, experience, and competencies. You'll never find a candidate that way. I always say, what does this person need to do to be successful? And every job in the world can be defined by a series of 6 to 8 performance objectives. Build a team to grow sales, launch a new product, analyze this problem and come up with the best course of action. It's stuff that people do. So now let me get you to the software spot. I had a client in Europe. They did go belly up during COVID, but that was a different issue. But the president always wanted to implement performance-based hiring, and every time a new rec was opened, they had to list the key performance objectives. We started doing work with their software department and had some I wasn't great at software, pretty good at all other jobs, but not great at software. So then, and the number 2, or the head of engineering there, went to another bigger company and became the number 2 engineer, software development engineer. So when ChatGPT came out last year, I took a couple of his jobs and said, okay, this is, and I can't remember the exact jobs, but let's assume it was a DevOps. And I went into ChatGPT. I said, create a performance-based job description for this job. and it listed the 6 or 8 things. And I said, put the task in chronological order. Understand the current product, understand what needs to be improved, work with the team to develop the user requirements, put the first level code together. It was always a sequence of steps involved. I then sent it to this candidate or to this VP. He said, hey, could you take a look at this, Bill? I just want you to, I'm just starting to play with this. He said, this is better than I could do. You want to do search assignments? I'm looking for 40 people like that. I said, absolutely not. I just wanted to know what you thought of the methodology. And this was like a year ago. I haven't talked to him since then. But the idea is that when I first take an assignment, I've always asked the hiring manager, what does this person need to do to be successful? Now, if I was a recruiter going in, I'd first go to ChatGPT. We're creating a little bot to do this, but I go to ChatGPT and say, create a performance-based job description in chronological order, listing the key performance objectives for this job. A little bit more to it than that, but it would come back with something fairly decent. I'd then go to the hiring manager and say, Michael, what do you think of this job? I know you're looking for a person with this background. What do you think these are the key performance objectives for the job? And the hiring manager would say, no, it's not exactly right. I need this, 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 and this. So now the key is, and this is the key step for recruiting. I'm going to go to recruiting 102 or 101. When you get these performance objectives, you ask the hiring manager, would you see someone who can do this work because they have comparable background doing work like that, even if they don't have the exact mix of skills and experiences listed on your job description? Job description says 7 to 10 years of this, must be that. But if you convert it to performance objectives, then the question becomes is, would you see someone who has done similar work? Oh, yeah, sure I would. I mean, it's like instantaneous. The hard part is getting in the room with the hiring manager to make that business case. But you then, as a recruiter, I would take, so let's assume you're a newbie recruiter and you're starting to do this. You create these performance-based job descriptions. You find you did your supply-demand analysis. You're looking for data analysts. And you say, oh, Michael, I see that you're looking for some senior data analysts to do this kind of workforce planning. This looks like some of the key performance objectives for that specific job. Would you be open to see candidates who have done similar work? So what you've done is you've given to this hiring manager whom you don't know this performance-based job description and opened up the door for you to find some candidates. I mean, that's a different model, but you do your supply-demand analysis, you start using performance-based hiring and performance-based job descriptions, and now you're in the game. And you've differentiated yourself because you're focused on a high-demand process, high-demand need, and you're using a different methodology to find the candidates. Game changer. You're now successful. 3 months from now, you're going to call, hey, who was that guy, Lou Adler, that old guy, Lou Adler, who came up with this great idea? That's what I would do if I was starting over again as a recruiter.
Super cool, super cool. And I like how you also plugged in ChatGPT. So that's very interesting. You mentioned one thing along the lines, which was that the hard part is to get on a meeting with the hiring manager to actually discuss the job rec. This is actually one of the struggles also that we see within our community. Lots of people actually, now cannot get job recs to work on. So if you take a step back, how do recruiters get the opportunity to onboard a new client and then even demonstrate that they have these skills and they can use ChatGPT and they can take advantage of the performance objectives?
Let's say that is the secret sauce for any business. I mean, it's not just recruiting. But so let's assume, now there's a lot of assumptions here. If you do your supply demand analysis and you see a high demand for a certain position, data analysts, software developers, whatever it may be, high demand, doesn't matter what the job is, but you've done your research so you know that, and that's the field you want to be in. I would probably look at a few key jobs and say, oh, this is a company that's nearby. I try to find some connection. I mean, that's without some kind of referral first, boy, it's troublesome. But if you got some connection somehow and say, okay, I got to do some preliminary legwork. I'm now going to really absorb that work, those jobs. I would probably find a few key candidates that are really good at that. I would probably then, now again, this is where it's hard. If you just go in cold without knowing anybody, but if I got a referral, let's assume that one of your former coworkers, Michael, was in this field and he says, hey, Lou, go meet Michael. He's doing some stuff. And I say, Michael, I'm just starting in this field, but I've got this unique approach that I want to share with you. And you don't go in as a recruiter. You go in, I want to just get some advice from you to see if you think this approach would work. I know you're looking for a lot of people here. I've identified a few candidates. I just love to chat with you to see if it even makes sense, this approach I'm taking. That's probably what I would do if I get a referral, as opposed to, I got 3 candidates for you. Do you want to see them? I mean, let's be real frank. That's a different model. That's this high volume, impersonal model. On the other hand, if you really want to be good for the long term, you got to develop these relationships. So I got referred to you by somebody you worked with in the past, and then you say, well, I like that idea, but maybe you should talk to somebody else in my company or my former coworker. So you got some candidates, I've got a couple meetings, and now I'm demonstrating how to do this. Now, pretty soon, within 30, 60 days, you're getting some search assignments you can work on. That's kind of the approach that now, it's easy for me to say this here because I'm not doing it. That is hard work, but in my mind, it's important work. And maybe in parallel, you kind of say, you kind of do, maybe it's 60% high touch, 30 to 40% impersonal. Okay, I got to just, I see this job's here. I see this, Michael's name. He's the VP of engineering at XYZ company. He's on LinkedIn Recruiter. Okay, let's see if I can do some mixing and matching here.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting that on the surface it feels easy, right? On one end, meet people, get referrals. On the other side, send mass emails, and then something will stick. But what is especially difficult with recruiting and business development at the same time is the rejection. Handling the constant, negative responses or even no responses at all. So have you seen some effective ways of how one can handle these negative emotions effectively over the long run?
I've been doing this for 44 years. There's a lot of rejection. Just got to deal with it. That's part of the game. It's maybe you get 1 in 10 wins out of 10 tries, and then it's 1 out of 6, and then it's 1 out of 4 or 5. And now with it's so much data going back and forth, it's hard to separate the value from the non-value. But the idea, and again, this is just my belief, so it could be wrong. My belief is that if you know the job, like I knew this fellow who's who's a VP engineer, he would have given me his assignments if I wanted him. I didn't want him because I don't want to do recruiting anymore. But if you know the job as a series of performance-based job descriptions, you're in the game. Now, I'd also think you have to have some candidates. And you might want to say, hey, I've been working these assignments. I've got a few candidates. I'd like to at least show you who they are. Even if you might hire one, I'm not going to charge you a full fee because this is a unique way I'm doing it. I think if you just go in with the idea, which is interesting, without the candidates, you're only covering half the challenge. If you have some candidates and the thing is, hey, I've found some candidates who I think can do this work when it's defined this way. This could be a game changer, Michael. I just like to explore the idea with you if you could do it. Now, that's an important pitch. Getting the audience with this hiring manager is going to be the hard part. And I don't think you're going to do it. Maybe you can send 20 emails out and hopefully get one. But maybe you got to send 100 emails to get one. And that's very frustrating. But this is a business where you're going to face rejection. And rejection is on the candidate side. Remember, you got a good candidate. If that candidate's any good, they're going to get another offer. And you're going to lose that candidate. And if so you got the hiring manager having to make an offer and you got the candidate having to accept an offer. So it's a pretty complicated business. So you got to say, do I want to be in the high touch market, which is understanding the job and the people and the careers, or do I want to be in the high transaction market where I just got to play the numbers game? And I'm not, in my mind, I think the high touch is better, but I might be wrong. Maybe the impersonal high volume is better. market is better? I don't know. I'd probably, given if I was starting out, I'd probably try both.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
just to say, hey, let me do 50-50 and see what happens and see if I can merge them together.
Mhm. So the high touch is, for example, executive search, or the example of the sales executives, right, where you meet people in person, you do
Yeah,
a
and it
lot of
could be, it
legwork.
doesn't have to be executive search, but it could be, you still could do it on contingency. Um, quite frankly, I started out as a contingency recruiter, uh, almost 10 years. And then all of a sudden, people started asking me to do retained work. I actually preferred contingency recruiting. Uh, now, at the time, I was handling two fields: accounting and manufacturing engineering. Why I got those two doesn't matter, but that's uh, so from an accounting standpoint, I would get 3 to 4 referrals a week from CPAs out of the major firms. Uh, and if you get it, and a lot of companies wanted to hire somebody from Price Waterhouse Cooper, Ernst and Young with 2 to 3 years in, bring him in as an accounting manager in their company. I was like, huh, it was gut, and people just love that person. So if I got 2 to 3 referrals a week, let's just say I got 6 a month. Let's just say it was 6 a month, and 3 of them were really good people. Well, I would run with those candidates. I'd call up different controllers and different people. Hey, Michael, I got this new candidate just right out of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Looks real sharp. Getting her MBA here. Had a background in manufacturing. Oh, yeah, I'll be happy to see the person, make a job for the person. So I did, and one month I made 7 placements like that at full fee, um,
Oh,
just because they were good. I got all these referrals, and all of a sudden now, the month before that, nobody came in, but I made so much money in that month, almost half my personal quota in that month, or maybe I didn't work for 2 more months, which was kind of sad. And it's which is the bad part of being a 100% commission salesman. When you're above your quota, you kind of said, okay, I don't have to work for a while, and then you lose everything and you got to get going again. But nonetheless, I don't feel sorry for myself. But then all of a sudden, I started presenting this concept of performance-based job descriptions to different business groups, and that just took off. Um, my next door neighbor, he said, "Hey, Lou, why don't you talk to this group?" And they said, "Talk to this group." And I said, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do." Uh, so that became the retained search, but I'm starting from scratch because I didn't have a network. So I think having a deep network is, at least as a core thing of what we talk about today, is essential. You got to develop a core network and a specialty and become known as a specialist in that area. And then maybe do a combination of high touch and in high volume.
very, very, very interesting. You mentioned the the importance of the talent pool, so the database of candidates, the search from contingent to to retained search, and what would be the best way for someone to actually transition? Because contingency search may often be very tiring, especially if the talent pool is non-existent, or if the recruiter changes the position too often. We've seen people jumping from one role to another in the past. So how to go from working on a contingent role, a different role every week or every day, to a retained search, which is kind of prepaid, or at least partially, 30% or 50% prepaid?
That's a pretty hard question to answer. They're two separate business models. I find, personally for me, contingency search was more satisfying. Number one, I use the same methodology in understanding candidates, understanding the job, but I had no responsibility if I didn't find a candidate. My client wasn't aggravated with me.
Hmm.
You're my client. You said, I'll try to help you, Michael. Give me a week and I'll try to find some candidates for you. But if I didn't, I was doing it on my own. So you didn't feel bad, and you'd call me in a month or 2 months from now with another assignment. When you do a contingency search, you're taking that person's money. You have to get that done. That's a lot of pressure. Uh, so it might seem easier because you're getting paid. It's not easier. The other one is easier if you're good at recruiting. I was good at finding accountants and manufacturing engineers. Manufacturing engineer goes into a company and figures out how to build the equipment to produce the product, whatever that company's building. It didn't matter So and the reason I liked accounting was they can work in any industry. I have a good accountant. I don't care as long as they're manufacturing. I don't care if they're making widgets or displays or handheld electronics, or it doesn't matter. So accounting was great because if you have a good accountant, you could put them in a lot of different companies. Similar for manufacturing engineers because they were a lower level. They still, today they make let's say $125,000 each, if not more. And software developers are like that as well. So there's certain functions that can transcend the industry. So if you have this deep network of candidates and you can apply them to different industries, if there's a change in the demand for that company, you at least have this talent base that you can work on that becomes your asset. And in my mind, the asset is developing a deep network of contacts, not a deep network of candidates. Contacts mean I can get referrals. So you might be a controller, but you also know dozens of other accountants. You might be a plant manager and know dozens of other engineers. You might be a manager of software development and know lots of people. You might be in the QA function and know lots of people. You might be in product marketing and know lots of people. So it's building a network that gets you instantaneous referrals. Now, every now and then you get candidates who are hungry, but if you get a search assignment, I got to say, who do I know who knows that person? So, Michael knows these people. He's an engineer. Michael, I'm looking for a couple of software developers to handle the new user interface. Yeah, here's a couple of people. And then there's we have a course on sourcing like that in our performance-based hiring workshop. But the point is, if you're really going to do something, it's your asset is this network that you can generate referrals in a week or two of good candidates rather than trying to do everything sending a bunch of emails out. And there's a lot of people, hey, I'm going to send emails out and hopefully I get a couple of good ones. No, my approach is I'm going to get a good candidate through a referral network. So that's just my model, is I believe referrals are the key to great success. And if you get a good referral, number one, that referral will give you more referrals, and that person who hires a referral says, this person's great. I want to give this recruiter more assignments. So to me, building that talent network is a critical piece, whatever network you want to be involved in, which you do by supply-demand analysis.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I'm kind of thinking now about all these candidates that somehow came through referrals to me, and I was never really able to place them. Also because I was not really focused on it. But now, as you are talking, I'm kind of looking at it from another angle. Like you mentioned, for example, the QA engineer could be a good referral partner for software developers. But then some of these candidates probably I just kind of pushed away because we didn't have any such role open or from our clients. So would you suggest in those cases with those referrals, do we reach out straight to hiring managers and say like, hey, look, here is Joe now looking for a job. Would you like to hire him? Or what would be the best
Okay, so you got to be careful about that. But the concept is correct. But let's assume you found Joe and he's a pretty good person, but not a great person. You probably can't proactively run with that candidate. On the other hand, if Joe is an A-level candidate and purely remarkable, then it's worth doing. Because now all of a sudden, everybody wants to hire an A-level candidate. They'll make a job for an A-level candidate. They'll make one, even if they don't have it. So if you have a client and said, hey, a VP of engineer, I just found this guy, Joe. He was referred to me. He's great. He's probably going to be off the market in 2 weeks. He's that good. I just like to introduce you to him and meet him on the phone for 30 minutes. And if you like him, you'll probably want to create he's the kind of person you want to create a position for. And I've had many of my clients, if you see a great person, make sure you call me. VPs and directors and good managers are always looking for these A-level candidates. So that's the one you'd run with. The other one, Joe is a good person, and maybe you place him if you had an open rec. You say, hey, Joe, thank you very much. I don't have anything at this point in time for you. Let's make sure you're in my network. I'll keep track of you. and we'll stay in touch every 30 to 60 days. And if you get a job, make sure you tell me. It's that kind of thing. But the beauty, if you have a LinkedIn Recruiter, and this is important, LinkedIn Recruiter, I can search on Joe's connections. So Joe connected to me. I can now go to look on Joe, and Joe's a QA guy. Well, Joe has got all these DevOps people working for him, all these UX designers, all these other people working for him. And I can then call Joe up. Hey, Joe, what do you think of Bill and Mary and Sophia? Yeah, I've got a spot for them, but I don't have a spot for you. So now you can just get a referral from Joe, even because you've searched on his connections. I call that proactive employee or proactive networking. And that's what the beauty of LinkedIn Recruiter is. Now you got to pay the full, you got to get the more advanced version of LinkedIn, but you can search on your connections. Those are your second degree connections. And to me, those are recruiters' gold. Because I wouldn't, let's assume he said, oh, Sophia's great, but she's not looking. But would she call me if I used your name? Oh, sure. So I call Sophia. Hey, Sophia, I was just talking with Joe. I've got a spot where I think your background could be interesting. And you open the chat if it made career sense. Oh, how's Joe doing? Oh, yeah, I'll be happy to chat. So number one, you won't call Sophia unless she's good. And number two, she'll call you back because she knows Joe. I mean, so that's what we're getting into the weeds of referral networking, but that's it. I mean, you're on the phone talking to people who have been referred to you. And Sophia now knows other people. Well, I need a good QA person. What about this and what about that? And all of a sudden, they're giving you names and you call these people up. So here's when you really break down the total market of talent for any function. Let's assume that's 100%. There's 20% of those people in that job are always looking. And they're pretty good, but they're not great. There's about 20% of those people who are, we call tiptoers. They're kind of looking, but they don't publish it. They don't post every job. They're just kind of looking, but they hope you find them. There's another 20 or 30% that are, we call explorers. They're kind of happy, but they absolutely will not look. And calls them. So you call them up and say, hey, we'd be open to chat about something if it made good career sense. They'll be happy to chat. Then you got the super passive. I like to go after tiptoers and explorers. And you get through them because they won't respond to a posting. You get to them through an email or a referral. And to my mind, get a referral is 10 times more powerful than an email in terms of response rates. You call 100 people up and be referred to you, 90% will call. You send 100 emails out, 5 or 10 will respond. So, I mean, I just tend to like referrals. To me, it's effort applied in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's just so cool how you talk about just picking up the phone and calling to either hiring managers or candidates. I mean, just so different to what a lot of recruiters do these days. They just sit by the desk, they open a laptop, they send messages, emails, and they are not really out there. And, I can see the energy, that, it feels almost like a different mindset or some kind of mental setup, which also helped you over the years.
No, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, one's very impersonal. Now just think about it. Everything you do that's impersonal like that, why can't AI do it? What I'm talking about, AI can't. Maybe AI could do some of the personal stuff too, but AI can absolutely automate all of the impersonal stuff. Why do I need you? I can create a chat bot that sends out emails to people with a certain skill set, with a certain meet certain criteria. I can then send emails automatically to a bunch of hiring managers or recruiters who have open needs. Why do I need a person to do that? I mean, that's kind of, to me, that if I was in the market for developing new solutions, that's what I would do from a technology standpoint. But I think when you offer people career moves and people who are going to be competitive and raise the talent bar at a company, to me, that's a long-term value that recruiters bring to the table. If you're just trying to fill jobs with people who are applying, I think that can be automated. And it's not maybe it is satisfying, you make a lot of money, but to me, it's not it's very impersonal, but it depends on what you want to do.
Interesting. Well, I guess I will need to rewatch this episode today because you share so many different insights, and I'm trying to write down notes.
No, I know you were going fast, and I was trying to talk faster than your hand was writing. So
Awesome, awesome. Cool. So, yeah, before we wrap it up, probably the last question, now the things seem to be changing with the AI. You mentioned chatbots. You are also developing some of the tool yourself, or I mean, within your team or company. Then there are lots of other companies developing stuff for the recruiting industry. So, what do you see as the future in recruiting when it comes to an individual solopreneur who is today transitioning to recruiting and wonders what to do? Like, is this even viable future? Like, is this a job that will be here in 5 years? What would you advise to recruiters today?
That's actually a profound question. And the answer is, I don't know. There's so much change happening, so much that you can't figure out what's happening. On the other hand, what I see companies doing is spending a lot of time on automating current processes, automating it. And I don't know that the current process is automating a process that's not very good to begin with to make it move faster. To me, doesn't seem like a great solution. So I truly believe that they're not automating the process of how the top 25% changes jobs and why they're successful once they change jobs. So that's a niche that I do not think people at companies spending a lot of money are actually working on. So I, as a recruiter, would say, okay, that high touch model seems to still be valuable. Companies are still looking for great people, not just to fill jobs. So now, I think that what I said is true. Do I know it's true? No, I don't know. But I'd probably, if I was a new recruiter, I'd say, okay, do I want to? There is a demand for talent. We know that exists. Are recruiters the vehicle to fill that demand? I believe they are, but I'm not positive. But I would probably try a different alternatives based on some of the theories or concepts that I presented today. So I probably want to step into it, but I think the world of recruiting in the future isn't going to be the way it is today. I guess that's the best I can say. It's just changing is too rapid. I don't know. And I might have some insight, but I don't have a lot of insight. So I can be very strong-willed about that. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be different and it's going to be exciting. No.
Yeah, yeah. So we will see in a few years, I guess. Awesome.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Cool. So where can people connect with you and learn more about you?
Well, I think if you go to powerhiring.com, no, it's not true, performancebasedhiring.com, or send an email to info@performancebasedhiring.com, you'll see all about us and what we do. And we have a book club based on the Hire With Your Head book club, which is a book that I've written, which is the one in the background there. I think if you go to performancebasedhiring.com and you'll start learning about performance-based hiring and some of the stuff we do. So, and hopefully we help recruiters change and grow and develop as the world changes and grows and develops as well.
Awesome. Well, we will include the links in the show notes. Thanks a lot for all your insights and all the hard work that you are putting into sharing the knowledge that you accumulated over the years. So thanks a lot for being here as well.
Thank you very much for having me on your show, Michael. Thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful.
Indeed, of course. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.